The Spy is probably one of TF2's most complex classes, equipped with at the very least a slightly more intricate kit than some other classes. Playing the class itself does require a decent mastery to play, as well as a good sense of utility with each of his various weapon slots. Now, as a Spy enjoyer myself, and the things that I've learned from the highest level Spy mains in the game, I've compiled here a short list of various different tips for Spy's weapons, ranging from some random buffs to the scenarios that using the weapon would work nicely in. So, let's just get right into it. Here are 3 tips for each of Spy's weapons to help you Spy players out there get more out of the unlocks that you use. Starting off with the revolver, which, just to put a disclaimer, since this is a stock weapon, meaning it is very similar to all of Spy's guns, these will be more general tips that can be noted for each of the weapons in the slot. Anyways though, firstly, even though this one seems kind of obvious and is said a lot, it is important to note that Spy has a gun. A lot of Spy players, including myself even, find themselves getting a little too drawn to their knives in scenarios where using a gun would best fit, such as picking off a low health target or damaging targets from distance while making escapes, unless you are primed for a backstab. A Spy's gun should always be brought out, since eventually you will use it. You can use it as well to fool enemies with a fake reload by reloading your gun while disguised. This only usually works though if the class that you're disguised as is using a gun that is reloadable, so don't try to reload the minigun. Despite the quite raved random bullet spread that TF2 has, the first bullet that Spy fires are always completely accurate, but shooting consecutive bullets will then make the bullets fly everywhere. Putting at least 1.25 seconds, or to put it simply, just some decent spacing between your shots, will reset your gun and make the next bullet you shoot fully accurate again, which can help if accuracy is required. The thing about this gun is, in exchange for its very nice weapon synergies it has, it also has damage penalty, which does make things such as snipers posted against the wall or with the Razorback slightly harder to kill, especially if they have really good reaction time. But shooting 2 bullets at a sniper and then comboing it with your knife could actually be helpful when using this gun, especially if you're like me and you usually don't hit the 3rd bullet. The extra cloak duration buff that this gun has as well has very good synergy, especially with weapons like the Dead Ringer, since not only does it allow a watch with a shorter cloak time to be used for longer, but also is the only item outside the spawn room that can recharge the Dead Ringer's cloak. Speaking of which, regardless of how far a target is, any hit with the Electron J will refill your cloak meter. So going for long range hits are definitely worth it with this gun if you're simply using it to refill cloak. Because of how good a sniper can be at range, most of the classes in the game can't really out-snipe him, except for a Spy with the Diamond Bag. So if you have the crits, do your team a favor if your 4 snipers aren't cutting it, and just out-snipe the enemy sniper. The Diamondback is also a really good gun to use against medics and the person they're healing, by backstabbing the healing target first, and then using the gun's crits to easily 2-hit a medic. If Gunslinger Engineers are also being a nuisance to your team, racking up crits by sapping mini-sentries does well, since usually engineers are not inclined to unsap a building that is so easily rebuildable. Although I've already mentioned to put spacing between each bullet, using the Ambassador requires you to do it constantly, since you can only headshot an enemy with it if you hit them with the first completely accurate bullet. You should also take note of an enemy's health before trying to use the Ambassador to kill targets. Sure, hitting a headshot with this thing is satisfying and does a lot of damage, but if you're just using it on any target rather than to actually finish one off, they can easily kill you back since you have to wait a while before being able to shoot again. The headshots as well, despite being a crit, do have damage fall off. Going for a headshot with this weapon is more useful if you remain in close range of your enemies rather than how a player would actually assume to use this weapon, which is for sniping. But this is just not the case. Don't be using this to snipe people across the map, it doesn't do that much damage. Use it as a close range, high damage option. Then there's the Enforcer, which is probably the easiest gun you can use to take out Razorback snipers, that allows you to reliably kill them with 2 bullets. The damage bonus also makes this gun a very strong weapon to pair with crits, allowing Spies to just shred enemies on a Halloween map, or when they're paired with a Crits Creek medic that's healing them. Make sure though that to make use of the other buff the weapon provides, which is the resistance penetration, that you are really honing in on any enemies that are using weapons with resistances, since this gun really can help with picking off those targets a lot easier. Spy's invisibility that is gained as he utilizes his watches are his best form of infiltrating space without being seen, and he can also use it as a pretty good escape tool. The thing about invisibility though is it does take a decent amount of time to be fully invisible when activating it. Start heading one way while you're waiting for the watch to fully make you invisible, and then you can fake out another direction once you are fully cloaked. Doing this can draw the enemy's attention to spy check where they think you were going when they were seeing your silhouette slowly disappear, as opposed to where you were actually heading. If you are hit with any effects that make spy visible, such as burning to a pyro, invisibility will wear these effects out a lot faster, rather than just standing there and taking the burning. Sometimes though, if you disguise while cloaking, for some reason the smoke that appears when you disguise will still follow you even when you're invisible. If you go invisible first though and then disguise, the smoke will be hidden. So make sure that if you are using invisibility to get away from enemies, you do not disguise until you are invisible. Next up, the Dead Ringer combines very well with the Spy's guns, because for some reason, if you reload a gun, then bring out the Dead Ringer, it actually reloads your gun slightly faster, which is a really good buff that the weapon doesn't even add to its description. You can also combine a teammate disguise with this watch, which will allow you to feign the death of the person that you're disguised as, which is a really underrated, useful tool that you can use as you make your way into enemy lines. There's also a speed boost that comes with activating the feign death feature, which can be quickly activated if you simply just want to catch an enemy that are a decent distance away from you. But I wouldn't recommend using this tip if the person you're zooming towards does have a decent headset, because they're gonna hear that on cloaks. The Cloak and Dagger is really the only watch in Spy's arsenal that allows you to stay invisible, which makes it really good when utilizing it on defense, since you don't have to give any space to the enemies to go refill your cloak. On the topic of Spy's cloak meter though, the Cloak and Dagger does drain its meter quite fast because of its cloak drain rate, but weapons such as the L'Étranger can counter this debuff quite well with the cloak duration buff that it has. This next one is a bit of an underrated tip, but there are doors like this one here you see on Frontier, which are only openable on one side. And Spies with the Cloak and Dagger, since they can stay invisible for as long as they want, can be quite exploitable, since a Spy can just stay invisible next to the door and hold it open for his teammates. Spy's knives are the most popular part of his kit, since not only does it bring in the instant kill backstabs, but also the ancient art of trick stabs. The two easiest trick stabs that I use in a lot of my games consist of, number one, the stair stab, which involves you being on a surface that is higher up than your enemy. It doesn't necessarily have to be stairs, really any elevated surface. And then halting your momentum with W to be in range of a good backstab. Or the Matador stab, which is basically when an enemy is walking in proximity of you, and then you walk one way so they turn to face that direction, and quickly fake the other way so that you are behind them. Although trick stabs and getting a lot of kills is nice, Spy performs the best though when not only does he put emphasis on how many kills he earns, but also how good his kills are. A priority pick is any class that is more lucrative to eliminate because of the support or area denial utilities that they provide to a team. Medic and Sniper are the highest on this list to a Spy. This is then followed by the Engineer and Heavy, who are ranked highly for similar reasons, and then every other class. Now obviously you don't have to go just for those 4 classes, but if there are enemies to choose from, then those would be the best ones to kill. Back on the topic of trick stabs though, the kunai is probably the best weapon to trick stab with because of the sustain that you gain from stealing an enemy's health, which makes it really easy to just keep chaining stabs. Now specifically how this health stealing works is when you backstab someone with the kunai, it will add a minimum of 75 health to a Spy, in addition to the amount that the target had. Backstabbing with it will also remove visibility effects with it as well, so if you're burned, backstabbing an enemy would remove the burning entirely, which makes using the kunai to escape a really good option. The Big Runner allows Spies to move quickly after killing an enemy with speed boost, but keep in mind that this speed boost does not stack with other items that give speed boosts like the Dead Ringer. Although you can use the 2 items together to combo them, which can be very good to traverse the map quickly. It is also a key point to note that you will earn this boost along with the extra cloak that this weapon gives you regardless if the enemy was killed with a backstab or not. So sometimes, if you're using the big earner, just knifing with this weapon is probably better than bringing out your gun to finish off a low health target. The speed boosts that the big earner can give you can also be used to traverse around the map and escape easier, which seems obvious, but most players just use the speed to simply just go for more kills. So if you enjoy using the big earner, try to find jumps or different paths like these that you can use in your escape routes. The Spycicle, despite it being considered as the pyro counter in Spy's arsenal, isn't actually that good of a counter depending on the awareness of the pyro you're up against. Sure, it allows you to be immune to burn damage, but if a pyro notices that you're using that weapon, then that pyro can simply just play around this team and spy check everywhere. So before immediately switching to this weapon when there is a singular pyro on your screen, take note of how aware that enemy is to you first, and if using the Spycicle will actually be a good counter to them or not. The Huolong Heater is a weapon in the game that also can be some sort of an indirect counter to the Spycicle. Despite the ring of fire around the person that's using it, you can actually just jump over the flame and pick off the heavy before it burns you, making the gun even less useful. Also take note that when your Spycicle is melted, you can recharge it with ammo boxes to make the cooldown a bit quicker, so you're not sitting there knifeless for the whole 15 seconds. The Year is very good at earning silent kills. However, just note that even though the enemies do disappear when you kill them because of the silent kill feature, they will still drop their weapons. The Year also for some reason has an increased cloak drain rate, but again, with the L'Etranger's cloak duration buff, this stat is not much of a staggering downside. Since switching disguises after killing an enemy doesn't alert sentries either, using this knife is actually quite good against a horde of engineers, making it much easier to pick them off one by one, rather than having to take one out and then seeing 17 sentry rockets from the other sentries flying towards you. The Sapper is not only one of the best tools to use against an engineer in his buildings, but you can also use them as distraction tools to put the engineer's focus somewhere else to go for other key buildings. You can even use it to just place it on a sentry temporarily and create an opening against other targets who think that the engineer and their sentry is defending them. The App Sap, which is a promotional Sapper reskin, is actually a pay-to-win weapon. When you have the Sapper active and you are nearby an enemy building, the eye will begin to close, which allows spies who are using this reskin to find hidden teleporters or other hidden buildings a lot easier. The Sapper is also technically the best weapon in a spy vs engineer matchup, since balancing between placing sappers on its buildings and attacking them with your gun or knife will put variety and have the engineer needing to switch focus between multiple different aspects rather than just shooting you. The red tape recorder, on the other hand, is useful when you're using it to counter specific items in an engineer's kit. One of which is a good point I found on the video you see here, which will be in the description, which is using it against the Frontier Justice. Most engineers using this gun will let their building be sapped so they can earn the crits from it. The Gunslinger as well is nicely countered by this item for a similar reason, since it takes a while for a mini sentry to be fully sapped by the red tape recorder. There's also the toolboxes that will drop once a building is fully sapped by this item, which is quite useful to a spy since it can be picked up and act as a medium ammo box to refill cloak. The disguise kit, although it doesn't have any side grades, is probably one of the most intricate items that Spy uses because of all the different ways you can use disguises to fool enemies. For example, the Scout, Medic, and Spy disguises are best used on the front lines since they are the only disguises that do not hinder the Spy's movement speed. And Scout and Spy more specifically are more lower profile disguises, people don't really notice them that much. Then there's the Demoman, Soldier, Pyro, and Heavy disguises, which are all round good disguises to use. And then there's the Engineer and Sniper disguises, which are quite good if you want to stay behind the enemies, or if you're patrolling near their spawn. You can also use your enemy disguises to view which weapons that player is currently using, which could be pretty good info that you can use yourself or give to your team at the beginning of a round to note down what kind of Uber a medic will be using, or which weapons an engineer will use. Even teammate disguises are actually quite useful, because you can use one like a friendly Pyro to sort of better defend your teammates while walking by them against enemy spies. That, though, is 3 tips for every spy weapon in TF2. And if you did enjoy this video, be sure to let me know in the comments below. Again, I appreciate all the support that I've been getting in my videos recently, And if you are looking for more TF2 related content outside of this channel, I just recently did a collaboration video with YouTubers like Thickboy John and TowerP126 where we completed every Halloween contract with randomized loadouts. So if you're interested in a video like that, the link will be in the description. But other than that, thank you very much for watching. I appreciate all the support. Make sure you do all that funny YouTube stuff like liking and subscribing, and I will see you all in the next silly little video I make. Bye-bye.